Oh, Mike from around the world is going to help me out. Mike from around the world. Mike, are you there? Wait a minute. Mike, are you there? Mike, wait, are you there, Mike? I hear you, but you're not coming through my. Wait a second. I got locusts. I gotta get rid of the locust, Mike. Wait.
Yeah, that's never good.
No, it isn't. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Good.
All right, all right. We got you in there. I think we can hear you good now. Everything's good. Wow. Now, it's never good to have a bunch of locusts in South Africa of biblical proportion, but man, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's rising all over the place.
Yes, yes. You guys hear Mike all right? Sounds good.
Sounds good, everybody.
Everybody happy? All right. All right.
It's getting busy out there, Pastor Paul.
It really is. It's getting very busy. Mike, come on now. I mean, okay, let me ask you. We got NATO's meeting. You have a big meeting in NATO. Somebody's talking chemical weapons. Putin's threatening World War III. It says it's going to go nuclear. So what's going? Ships are sinking. Stuff is being found. Jamming devices. So what's going on, Mike? Tell us what's happening.
Oh my! Everything is happening. It's like a big revealing, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yes. I believe that's what I called 2022 was a year of reveal. People should see things going on. You know, it shouldn't be a mystery. They can't hide things like they used to. Things are a bit too obvious, and the other half just doesn't care. So here we are.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question. It's been a month now since the invasion of Ukraine. Putin's lost 7 generals, from what I know of, that have been killed, maybe more. His top financial guy, I mean, not just a financial guy, this guy was the main guy that set up the banking systems for this Russian Federation, and was the man that hired Vladimir Putin to work in the presidential administration. His name was Chublis. He's defected. He's resigned. He's in Istanbul, Turkey. And the other key guy, the Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, hasn't been seen for 12 days. What's going on? Are the wheels coming off at the Kremlin?
Well, it seems that way. This is where we need some of the generals that were back in the 80s. We need them back. Why? Because they knew what happened to. They knew the history of Stalin. They knew a lot of the Russian tactics. And I'm telling you right now, what Putin is doing right now is just like a Russian tactic right out of some of the older books, because they will always probe to see where their loyalty is. Right? They will also draw out the enemy to see what their responses are and just how much they can get away with. To date, Putin has not used his mainline forces. He has used secondary forces. He sent out ships that were rusted to pieces. The equipment that's going out to the Ukraine is also in bad shape. He pulled those out of a junkyard. And I certainly do hope that people are wise enough, especially NATO is wise enough to realize, I believe that they are. They're just not saying anything, which is why they have sent so many troops to the front. NATO is dispatching troops as we speak because they know that Putin has not launched the heart of his army yet. They're just, they're on call. They're at the ready for NATO, not for the Ukraine. And in fact, he spoke, they were playing, I don't know if I say this or not, but certain audio clips indicate that Putin swore he would not send his mainline troops to the Ukraine, that he would send some of the secondary forces to the Ukraine. Who's in the Ukraine right now going up against them? You're looking at Iranians. There are Iranians who have been spotted by the Ukrainians, lots of them. You're looking at people from the Middle East that have been in the Ukraine. And so as far as Russian forces being there, they may have squad leaders or platoon leaders or company commanders that could be mainline Russian reservists, but his main forces are not there. So we can't, I wouldn't suggest that anybody just say, hey, the Ukraine is just handling this, because what they're doing is they're being probed. They may not. Russia has some very dirty tactics, and this probing is taking place most definitely.
So you're saying the probing? Well, first of all, you're saying that Russia's using their junk equipment and young,
Yes, they are.
and this could be like a play action if it's football, play action pass is coming. He's faking. He's saying this is the best they got. The media's saying, man, we can't believe how the Ukrainians are hanging in there, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, the real Russian army's going to show up.
Yeah, because what that does is it really causes the West, it really causes NATO, us, and other people to really come out with their strong opinions. In Russian tactics, you always have to know where your enemy's heart is, right? You can't engage the enemy unless you know where the heart is. And
Right.
once you draw out their response, then you hit them before they can hit you. Now, this is a tactic people don't know about. Russians will strike you before you can do anything. They will decapitate you before you can move. They're going to find out who you're loyal with. They're going to start calculating. These guys are masters at calculations of just putting on these fronts that the whole world has fallen for since we knew about Russia, right? So yeah, I'd be very careful with that guy because I smell something coming. Putin is very devastating in his actions. People can see that right now. But what he's doing is drawing out violence from us, right? He's
Yep.
also, throughout all these meetings, he's causing us to work a whole lot and to shuffle, and prices are fluctuating. And he hasn't really engaged the USA in anything or NATO in anything. He's just in the Ukraine. But yet we're already wreaking havoc. Now, our citizens are going to get tired of the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs due to this war, and they're going to show this unfavorable action to the war. And I guarantee you that's when Putin strikes, and it's coming quick, fast, and furious. The other part of that is, if Putin ever seems like he's about to lose everything, he will burn the U.S. with his best effort. He will preemptively strike the U.S. with something massive. He will not fail to do that. So there is no winning with this guy, and that's why you had these individuals in the USA saying, well, somebody ought to assassinate him. I hate to repeat that, but because they already know that to continue to engage this guy in this way is very dangerous for everybody out there. Putin could wipe away the Ukraine so easily. He could wipe away NATO so easily, and he already knows this. The counterattack will be devastating. We'd have no choice, which would sink the. Nobody wins in that scenario. Right? And that's what the West tries to avoid, this no-win scenario. But if they ever get Putin into a position where he is, he really is losing part of that war, he won't hesitate but to preempt. And what I'm saying is he's gauging right now. His next move could be that preempt, and everybody is on guard for that.
You know, folks, Mike from the world's with us tonight. I think we're hearing some very good wisdom. Putin is, excuse me, is probing. He's also probing, Mike. Don't you see what our response is when if he does use a little bit of chemical weapons? Let's then wait back and see how we respond. I mean, the tactic of the Russians is basically stick the mush until they hit steel. They keep going, right? They keep probing. And do you feel? Because I think we're hearing the media. They're trying to act like that Putin's about ready to throw up his hands and try to come to a settlement. Or I don't even think he's got started yet. I think he's got his eye on the prize. I think he's really going after NATO, don't you?
Yeah, and you know what, the rhetoric or the conversations, the traffic between Russia and the Middle East has never been as high as it is right now.
Wow.
So there's a lot of conversations taking place with Yemen, with Africa, with Persia, with just all these different places. That's why Turkey jumped in. Turkey has supplied a huge, a vast amount of deadly drones to the Ukrainians, right? Because they've already, publicly said that they stand with the Ukrainians. Now that's very difficult for Turkey because Turkey, well, they're hosting the Navy of Russia. So how do you do that?
I don't get
And
it.
that's going to come with great consequence.
Yeah. Now, Mike, do you believe that Putin will use some type of phosphorus chemicals, or do you think he's going to use some of this in the next week or two?
Well, he's done that before.
Yeah.
He did it in Crimea. He did it in other occasions. He wipes out everybody who disagrees with him. He's his I don't even trust the movements of those who are close to Putin, because they have too many times they have falsely defected and went right back to Russia. They gathered intel, they gathered the sympathy of state personnel, and they went right back to Russia, reporting everything they found. So it's very difficult to trust anybody in these games. And basically, you're working with a bunch of spies, is what you're working with. These are not people with the morals that we have. They're loyal to one another. They're certainly not loyal to outsiders, right? Because they are
Right.
they have their own communist views. So there we are with that. I do believe Putin will draw out the U.S. He's going to draw us out. In fact, he's done a few things that will draw us out. And the Ukrainians have been warned the other day, yesterday, and tonight, to be careful of their findings. They have been warned that Russia has in the past set deadly booby traps that have brought down pieces of infrastructure. They are masters with computers and code and electronics and remote viruses that seem to evaporate when you try to hunt them down and find them. So they set booby traps and Trojan horses all over the place. The U.S. is on high alert for cyber attacks right now. We have a closed net system that, for the first time in history, we just closed off part of the net from certain types of traffic, and we're jumping to what's called IPv8 that nobody knows about, but they have to introduce that early because our IPv6 communications network around the U.S. could be compromised, and they have to quickly evolve and go to something else. So Russia's not, they're probing, they're causing countries to act in specific ways. Most importantly, for every dollar we cost them in sanctions, they're costing us in preparations. So he did this on purpose. Putin has said that if we put sanctions on him, he's going to make us spend our money on just throw our money away. And that's precisely what he's doing. And he's a master at this stuff because it's working. So anyway, we face this situation. One of the gravest concerns right now is that if anybody else leaves the Ukraine, in fact, they told people to come back. You know that, don't you? If too many people leave the Ukraine, Russia will have no problem going in there with the entirety of their armies to do a purge burn. And a purge burn is when they start setting things on fire that won't affect, some of the fields and other things like that. They won't hesitate to do that to get that land back. So they told people to come back to the Ukraine. They encouraged people to come back to the Ukraine so that if he tries anything like that's going to look bad in view of the whole world. If nobody's there, he'll burn that place and take it. But if everybody comes back, humans are in the way like a human shield. I know it's distasteful.
So
to say
who's
that,
asking?
but that's
So
precisely
who's
what it
calling
is.
for the Ukrainians to come back? Is that Zelensky?
That's the rest of the world.
The rest of the
world is
world. Rest of the
calling.
world.
You have leadership in NATO and in the U.S. and other places that have requested that, they're trying to put out there, you people need to go back and occupy that territory. Because if everybody leaves, he's got a scorched earth policy,
Yeah,
right? He
he
can just burn
does.
everything else out with that. Nobody's going to complain about any type of humanitarian crisis because everybody will have left. And so the rest of the world says, no, go back. So that if he tries something, it's going to look bad in view of the whole world. And of course, at that point, if he looks at that bad in front of the whole world, they will devastate that place,
Do you
and the
think
world
these
will not
guys?
rebel
Do
against it.
you think these guys that are leaving are defecting? Is they're afraid of war crimes coming, and they don't want to be a part of it?
I think one in particular wants to gather intelligence, and he has ambitions for his own survival. That's what I
Right.
believe, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe they have a conscience about war crimes. You have to remember, they put people to death. They put their basketball team, most of their basketball team died 2 years ago from doing things they shouldn't have. They jail people all the time who speak against the policies
Yep.
within the state. In that fashion, they're just like Iran,
They
but they're a bit
assassinate.
worse.
They
They get rid of
assassinate their
people.
political
That's
opponents.
right. That's right.
And
That's right.
they just killed the one guy about 5, 6 years ago. They just killed him right in
That's
front of
right.
the Kremlin. The other one is right now rotting in prison. They poisoned him twice. I mean, yeah, this is the KGB way of handling things. And
There you go.
yeah, all right. Let
So
me ask you
they're
this:
not taking that moral high ground. That's not what they're doing. If you remember who they assassinated and the sheer number of people they assassinated in the last 5 years, you'll get an idea of what their consistency is and how they really are. So you can't forget that part,
Now, Mike, also, there was a ship. I guess Ukraine sank one of the Russian landing ships that was bringing.
They did.
This is pretty significant. They used some kind of short range missile. How'd they do that?
Oh boy. You know what? When that happened, I said, oh boy, I know Pastor Paul's going to say, wait a minute. How did they sink this ship? Because if it's NATO from the air doing something, somebody's in trouble. And
Right.
so how did they do it? Well, to date, they have shipped a lot of weapons over there into Ukraine. They actually have. They have ground-to-ground missile systems that are actually labeled ground-to-air, but they work ground-to-ground. Of course, the Stingers, Javelin, tactical unarmed aerial systems, and these high-tech grenade launchers, some other missile platforms they have shipped over there. More are on the way. They have deadly drones that can take out artillery and other other hardened facilities. They have quite a few things. They have missile intercept systems, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of firepower in the Ukraine.
All
They
right.
have mustered a lot of support in that area. I wouldn't be surprised if they took that ship down. The problem with that is, if you take a look, if you go look at that ship in research, and you'll find out that that ship was in port because it was falling apart. That ship was falling apart. So they send that ship out there, and they sink it. And the Ukrainians, they're gauging. I'm telling you, they're probing. Russia, for example, Russia just tested 2 brand new hypersonic missile systems that
Right.
flew around the earth 4 times during this assault with the
Are you
Ukrainians.
serious?
These weapons deployed 2 objects apiece, and they came right back home. So are they really concerned about the Ukraine? They're sitting there testing hypersonic technology. They've already shot satellites out of the sky from the ground. And nobody was the wiser about that. So, I'm telling you, they have a capability. They're just not showing anybody else.
So is there some propaganda going on here in America that's trying to paint Putin as quite that his army's failing and they're floundering and they don't really have much
Well,
equipment?
of course they are. In wartime, that's priority number
And do
one.
you
It's
feel like that
propagandized.
Russia's a lot more dangerous than what the world
Yes,
really?
yes.
And what
I'm not
about?
the only one, but yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Now let me ask you, what about this Ukraine's finding this radar jamming system somewhere in the woods? Was that just a trap? I mean, how do you
I
just?
think that's a booby trap,
Okay, I
right?
was wondering about
Number
that.
one. No, here's number one. Some of the code that Russia uses, only a machine can understand. And yet these guys are at the head of the space program, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
has to remember we were using their spaceship to get back and forth to the space station,
yep.
which means they're mathematical geniuses. But in their equipment, they use code that only a machine can understand. In other words, you're talking about a pure binary, encrypted binary language. Nobody can figure that out. And if they go power that system on, they so much just get a laptop near it. It could go through that laptop and infiltrate every network that laptop has been a part of and every phone within a 200-mile radius. So they might want to be careful with
This
that. They've
might
been
be so
told,
you're saying this could be a Trojan horse set up
you better
here.
believe it. You better
And
believe it.
so,
Because
go
you
ahead.
better believe it.
It, it,
It's
uh,
too new. It looks too good. It's too new, and they're just not going to leave a piece of critical tech out in the middle of nowhere.
no, I mean,
They're not even. They're not going to do that. Russia's not going to do that. That's almost like that's a planted, Trojan horse for real. And so if these guys go in there and start saying, hey, we got something here, and go plug a piece up, a small chip, right? They can plug a chip in and power that chip on, and it can take control of whatever facility it was powered up in. That's how things are these days.
So Russia's kind of, in your opinion, right now, the first month of this war, Russia's playing possum. Is that right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, and that's dangerous.
They are.
That's dangerous.
The real dangerous part is I do believe we're about to see some capabilities from Russia. Unfortunately, in order for Russia to show their true capabilities, because they're very secretive, it means a first strike. That's what it means. And they're probing now, according to their own playbook. This leads up to a first strike. And that's why everybody has advised the president, Mr. President, this is right out of the playbook. They're working up to a first strike. Well, how do you know this? This is the way they worked over history. This is in their culture. This is the way they do. And after they get everything they need, then all of a sudden somebody's going to wake up. America could hear sirens, air raid sirens, right? We could hear those things. I have a feeling that one day we're going to entertain that. And it's going to catch us off guard if we get caught in this pride situation, and start sleeping too much.
I think that with the NATO meetings, as emergency meetings, I think, Mike, you're right. The 30 nations came together, and the only thing that really came out of that was, well, if he doesn't, if Biden's saying, if his chemical attack, it depends how bad it is how we'll respond. This is open. This is like a green light again to open the door to Putin. I mean, is this?
Well, it's also an explanation. Think about something. When he gave that comment, he was no doubt reading something, right? But what he says is this: in response to their response, right? We're going to respond, but we're going to respond in measure to what they do. And he's saying this because he knows that Russia is probing, right?
Right.
And he wants to go ahead and get the people ready, because if we come back with a full strike against his probing, everybody's going to turn on us. We live in a world right now where if you use too much force on anybody, they're going to look at you as a bad guy.
Yeah,
You're going to lose all public support. The world's going to turn against you. And it only takes one Facebook post that makes sense to 1,000 to spread across the world. All of a sudden, you have dissidents, governmental breakdown, and everything else. We live in that type environment. So they're very careful to go ahead and say things prior to them doing it, just like the weapons delivery in the Ukraine. They said, well, we're thinking about delivering weapons to the Ukraine. However, they made the decision and the preparation weeks before they ever said that. Yesterday, they ran a small clip on Joe Biden going to the meetings overseas, and they had to pull that clip because they showed it too early, which means they already prepared this clip a couple days ago, and NBC was playing it, and they pulled the clip.
Yeah,
because they weren't supposed to do that. That was everybody started to scramble over something.
That was the New World Order. That was that New World Order comment.
Well, it was too early.
It was 2 days. He wasn't even there yet.
Too early, so
I know.
That would just give away the whole thing.
I was watching it, and I said to myself, oh, I didn't know he was in Brussels already, because he had the Brussels thing behind him and everything.
Yeah.
And he's telling how we need to start a New World Order. And this was on Monday. And then I said, wait a minute. He's not supposed to be there till Wednesday or Thursday. And so they released this 2 days early. So which means
they totally messed that up.
Yeah, and I was wondering about that, but I scratched my head and said I don't get it. But so there's some mistakes being made, I think. Let me ask you a couple of things. Of course, Putin did threaten World War III this afternoon. He said if we go World War III, it will be nuclear. Do you feel that he may do a tactical nuke strike? Because see, right now, he's got everybody believing he will. They're scared to death to move. Do you think he might just, if they try to do more against him, do you think it's possible he'll do a first strike?
When he activated two missile brigades, he turned the systems on, right? These are very expensive machines. Once you turn one on, it gives the position of the system away. You don't do that unless you're prepared to use it, right?
Right.
So I'm telling you right now, they are ready to fly. That's very expensive to do. No one does that because it gives away the position of that warhead. Now,
right.
if you're about to go to nuclear war, you will turn the systems on. It's not going to matter if somebody knows where they are, right? That's just not going to matter. Satellites pick up heat plumes of a very specific type and a certain type of radioactive signature once these systems are armed, and they are armed. So, does he have a mindset to do it? You better believe it. Will he do it? Yeah, he will if he feels it's going to be in the best interest of his inside circle. He most certainly will. The Russian mindset is sometimes you got to risk 10 million to save one, right? Sometimes for an ideology, everybody has to die so long as there's one survivor. This is their mentality. This is the way they think. So they're willing to, they love their people and everything else, but they're willing to risk quite a few people to keep an ideology going for their children who come in the future. Will he launch? You better believe it. If he ever feels he's about to lose, if he ever feels the world is taking the side of the West and NATO, which is why he's putting together, I'm telling you now, he's putting together an alliance, and everybody's talking to him and he's talking to them. The radio chatter is extremely high.
Well, who's
their
this
motivations are changed. So
Well, I mean, I would imagine Iran is one of his alliance partners for sure, and maybe some of these, maybe Hezbollah and some of these,
why is Saudi Arabia all of a sudden they're friends with
I
Russia?
can't figure that one out.
I told you, I've always had this belief.
Yep.
I don't trust Saudi Arabia. I do not trust Jordan. I understand the inner workings of these people. And as long as they have these ideological positions that they have, and this instinctual mindset to go forward the way they do, they can't be trusted.
No.
Certainly not in regards to Christianity. They're going to turn on Israel. They're going
Yep.
to turn because of the reputation of what NATO is doing. This is going to carry out too far. And the world's going to turn against, they're going to turn against Israel. Israel's going to be blamed for using too much force. NATO is going to be blamed for conspiring to kill innocent people in the Middle East. It's going to get ugly. We're going to get the blame for it. Everybody's going to turn against Israel for that reason.
Even
and
including,
then the tables turn.
don't you think even the Biden administration will turn against Israel?
I don't think there's going to be a Biden administration when it gets real worse. Here's
Wow!
what I think will
Whoa,
happen.
whoa, 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 whoa!
When that takes place, Pastor Paul, when that takes place, I believe that America is going to be so crippled internally that we won't really be. We're going to have to spend our time restructuring. Do you know what's happening in the USA right now? Right? You know what's happening. Right?
Okay, tell me, a restructure going on?
Since the Ukrainian war began,
Mm-hmm.
the civilians, there are too many high position people, civilians, who have taken a position to arm as many people as they can. Do you know that, right? So
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
You're looking at a consolidation period within the U.S. They're frightened that the same thing that's happening in the Ukraine is going to happen right here in the USA.
Yeah.
But who's going to be the assaulters? They think it's the government.
No, it could be
I'm
Russia
just telling
coming
you
in.
now. That's what they think.
It could be Russia coming in the back door. I've always worried about them coming right through Alaska, coming right down the back door. They think it, but you're saying American public thinks it's going to be
82 million.
Yeah, that's who they
82
think.
million Americans.
Yep.
They do believe that somehow this power is already in a compromised mode. Gun sales have gone through the roof.
Yep.
Because they have stopped most of the rounds, 10.62, 5.56 millimeter rounds that were supplied to the USA come from Russia because all that's being cut out. People are buying ammunition like crazy.
Yep.
Gun sales are out the roof. And the people who sell guns promoting the idea that, yes, we could be or become our own government or some other entity. So, of course, they're going to push people to get their weapons. The problem is the violence level is going up all over the world. And now it's among teens like you wouldn't believe. And gun sales are out of control. They're out of control with these young people who like to dismember other people, right? Who are attacking older people in society. Like a demon is loose, taking advantage of.
It is a demon. You're right. Mm-hmm. Are you serious? There's a demon loose. Legion's loose. And matter of fact, that's why, Mike, I'm writing this book, Revelation 9:11. That's the release of Apollyon. We haven't seen this yet. We have really not seen the hordes of hell completely turn loose, but they're galloping now. It looks like the four horsemen of the apocalypse are galloping, Mike. They really do.
Spreading.
Let's talk about food supply for a minute. This is big, and I still want to get to the effects of Planet X and some of these tornadoes and the plasma disturbance going on in space right now. They say that the Tonga volcano has caused significant space plasma disturbance. But let's talk about food. Okay, nobody's growing wheat and barley right now in in Ukraine. So we've got to have a serious. How bad is this shortage going to happen, Mike?
Well, it'll likely get worse now because shipping, Russian ships and Chinese ships and some of your Middle Eastern ships were largely responsible for transporting food items. These companies were doing that. They can easily obstruct shipping. They believe that Russia will interfere with shipping. They believe that China is not going to, they're not going to, tell them not to do it. So we're going to have a shipping problem again, right? Also, because of the earth, crops are going to be lost all over the place. They already know this. They know this.
So do you think
crops are going to die?
Do you think the crops are going? We're going to have a bigger problem with climate crisis than than the war in Ukraine stopping about 25 to 30% of the wheat? You're saying climate crisis is going to cause more famine here in the next year or two than what's happening in Ukraine?
It's going to do a lot of damage. In fact, I'll say this. I'll say this so everybody can remember and hold me accountable. When the Ukrainian places are in ruin, the water's coming. The bugs will come first, and the water's going to follow, and that process has already begun. When this water comes, it'll be due to atmospheric issues we have not experienced before.
Atmospheric experience. Okay, let's talk about some atmosphere. Let's talk about the Tonga volcano eruption that caused significant space plasma disturbance. I understand the ash went as far as the mesosphere. We're getting reports now. They're saying that was this volcano? Is this actually a natural volcano, or did somebody detonate something in there?
I believe it was natural, but the problem was there was a double explosion when this happened. Right, the time it happened, there was a double explosion. I can't. The day it happened, you could see the clips. You can't see the clips now. It's almost like it's been scrubbed. There was a double explosion.
Yeah.
The explosions were about 100 or 200 miles apart, but there was a double explosion. Both had origins in the ocean. When it did erupt, it sent. There was a static discharge that went about. It's about 49 miles straight up. That's right above, right in the upper layers of the mesosphere where the sprites are. And because it's in the area where the sprites are, or the electrical potential in the atmosphere is so vast, right? It is very high in that level. It causes this plasma shell to form around the Earth. And this is where plasma discharges come from. This is what the archaeologists found back in the 80s when they interpreted some of these etchings that were in the rock. People had mistaken them for one thing, but the truth was they were sustained plasma discharges that they were etching in the rock, saying that they're coming again as part of the cycle of when the Earth goes through this very special season, this very destructive season. Plasma discharges are maintained. They look like hourglasses, right? And they are maintained for several seconds on the surface of the Earth, and they're quite large. If anybody touches one, they will be incinerated. That's what a plasma discharge was. It's like lightning that does not move. It just stays there, and it stays locked with some of the magnetic forces and the electrical potential within the planet itself. It rips right through the ground up into the atmosphere and back, and so they stay that way. They had to deal with that a long time ago. They know that through clarifications of archaeological finds, of which they read it, and it basically described the same thing that happened in the Arabian desert. Plasma discharges, same description, same length of time. So there's going to be a problem with a lot of these sustained plasma conduits that will go from the sky to the ground, and anybody who gets near it, anything near it, it will just simply incinerate. It vitrifies sand, it turns it right into glass, and all sorts of things begin to happen there. And now we see people are starting to get the evidence because this particle influx that we've been having over the years has built up to a point to where our upper atmosphere in 2013, Paul, or 14, 15, one of those years I was talking to you on the phone, one of the first times I was talking to you.
Yeah.
I was describing a process. I said, with all this material coming into the upper atmospheres, it's going to become dense. Right now, back then I said, right now, the temperature goes up to about 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 degrees up there. The problem is it doesn't burn anything up because there's no matter to transfer the heat. Well, with all this influx of particles, the particles are going to allow the heat to be felt, and it's going to really superheat the upper atmospheres. That will devastate us down here on the surface of the Earth.
So now they're also saying that the thermosphere is heating up.
There you are.
In the solar cycle 25. So they're calling, I understand it's solar cycle 25 and it's starting to build, but isn't this binary system really overriding, feeding energy to the sun, which in turns is heating the thermosphere, which is going to do some significant damage on Earth with wind speeds and all that kind of things? I mean, is that kind of where we're going?
2 years ago, the activity of the sun was higher than it is right now. right?
Yep.
This year, you're going to notice the slightest activity in the sun is going to have a dramatic effect upon the Earth. Why? Because you'll have a lot more matter that's introduced into the upper atmospheres, which will transfer energy from that radiation is going to go from one area to the next. We actually can have absorption this year. In fact, we will. We're going to have absorption. We're going to have fires. We're going to have quite a few things. The fire alert is going out already. I hope that Christians are paying attention because they're ramping up with certain special agents that are going into fire retardant is what they're using. But cities are now stocking up on this stuff because they know that fires are going to be all over the place. They know this because you can't get away from small meteorites. You can't get away from increased lightning and plasma discharges. You can't get away from that stuff. And so it's coming. It will form. The storms are going to be devastating. But we're just now seeing the beginning of a very long cycle that will wear mankind out.
The tornadoes have been rough all week. We're seeing all kinds of changes, violent tornadoes. Yes, I know it's spring. Yeah, I know these things happen. But it seems like the speed and the size seem to be much more stronger and quicker. They're coming up on people much more quicker. Now, there was also, Mike, in Spain last week, there was the sky turned apocalyptic red. I mean, I understand that there's dust particles, but I'm starting to wonder, you can't blame this all on the Sahara Desert, can you? I mean, what's going on?
In times past they did. Red is also the shortest, it travels the shortest distance of all the other lights. So when lights, say for example, if a strange light were to hit the atmosphere in a certain way, red is what you're going to see, and because it travels the shortest distance. It means that, and people have been noticing in certain parts of the earth that we have kind of like a double blurb of light coming over the horizon. Something is going on near the sun still, and people are starting to see this something that's not supposed to be there early in the mornings. And more things are happening. There were two occasions in the southern hemisphere that clearly another object, a planet-sized object, was right there by the sun. It was lit up by the sun. It was seen by lots of people. Unfortunately, we don't get news from South America.
Yeah.
Anyway. Every time something like that pops up, all of a sudden we have a crisis somewhere in that area, and nobody gets the news out. But we have a lot of changes in the skies. But nobody should worry. They're going to be an eyewitness with a first class ticket, a first class seat to see every change in the atmosphere they want to see. Because as we continue to go forward, there is no hiding the eventualities of this binary system coming in. The energies are going to be too high. People are going to notice everything altering and changing. Static electricity is going to go up, wreaking havoc on our devices, electronic devices. They're already having this, Pastor Paul, because the guidance missiles. Do you not know that every country is having an issue with laser or pre-programmed guided munitions? Every country is having issues with this.
Why
there have been
is
so
that?
many things that have not hit the target. Something is interacting with the guidance systems on these missiles. It's just causing all of them to go haywire.
Well, is that you think that's part of the is that part of the effects of Planet X? That there's some kind of disturbance, some kind of.
Well, there's certainly a large electromagnetic influence in the upper atmospheres messing with technology. Not only is it affecting missiles, but they're having to do adjustments on real-time computers and some of the flight dynamics of these aircraft, some of the flight computers of these aircraft. And it's just like that flight that went down over China, that disturbs me.
Yeah.
That
you
really
said
disturbs
that
me because
that's
very disturbing.
You told
I know
us.
we've had planes missing and all this kind of stuff, but that disturbs me. For a plane just to drop out of the air, basically.
And Mike, you've been saying it's as this thing gets closer and closer that planes are going to just be falling out of the sky for no reason. This thing fell 30,000 feet in 2 minutes. I mean, it just nosedived. How can that happen?
That's a very robust aircraft. That's a robust aircraft. You're just not going to lose all computers on 737. Just have that thing just bloop, go out. The flight dynamics don't work. All the computers, all the redundancy in the computer's gone. You can explode all the lithium on that craft and still have some sort of flight control, but they had nothing. They had nothing.
And they had no warning, and they made no radio contact. I mean, they just went down. So they lost everything. Everything,
Yeah,
all
that
the
wasn't good.
that is insanity. So do you think that was something super? I mean, extra. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a mechanical failure, but something shorted it, like some kind of burst. The sun, some kind of
Whatever it
magnetic.
was, whatever it was, in my opinion, my humble opinion, it had to have a very large influence because there's no way to shut down all systems on an aircraft like that with so many redundancies built in.
Yeah.
If a person understood the redundancies built into that aircraft, they would say that thing's like built like a tank. How in the world can that happen? You
Yeah.
know, it's built with, you have a computer backing up a computer, which backs up a computer for a computer, which backs up the other three sets of computers. So all of them would have to go out in order for the mechanisms, not the work, hydraulics to fail and everything else. So yeah, that's very disturbing because that's disturbing big time.
Madeleine Albright, the first woman Secretary of State, the 64th Secretary of State of our country, died. Some people have said, could this be the person in the coffin? I don't know. I didn't see your dream, but I'll ask the question.
No, it wasn't her. No,
Okay.
it
But
was someone.
obviously, whoever it's going to be is going to be so significant, it's going to affect the world in a
Yes, it
major way.
will. It
Yeah.
will affect the world. So it's not going to be a passive individual.
Right. This is
This will be one of your main ones. So
yeah. Okay. Now, they just fired CERN up again. Are you concerned about CERN?
I'm always concerned about. CERN is essentially a huge set. Now, here's one thing: the solar activity is up.
Right.
Our thermosphere density is up. Right.
Right.
You turn CERN on. Every time they turn CERN on, it does indeed affect the magnetosphere of the Earth. Right. Because of its concentration of magnetism. But also, if they start to affect that at the wrong time, and the sun is sending out all these solar blasts, not CMEs, just solar blasts, just solar winds,
Yep.
and they're polarized. The polarity of the winds are changing. It's kind of difficult to explain, but they're changing. If CERN fires up, it could draw radiation right to the too close to the Earth, right to the surface of the Earth, and hopefully, but well, I don't know what will be the result of that. Also, CERN is a controlled nuclear explosion. I hope everybody understands that. That particle collider is a containment field, so that the nuclear reaction will not take place.
It's
That should
protons.
be easy for everybody to understand, right?
They're taking protons at the speed of light and they're colliding them, right?
Yeah, everything is collided down to its basic components, and that's essentially a controlled nuclear explosion, a contained nuclear explosion. And they examine the particles as they decay, but that's essentially a contained nuclear explosion. So what happens with a part failure in the collider itself? What happens if it's no longer contained? For example, the time when that aircraft flew near it and it went down, right? That becomes a particle weapon. Is
Yeah.
what happens. If they lose magnetic containment, those particles will jump the tubes. They'll go out anywhere they want to go. The only thing that can hold those beams into place are those large magnets they have built, right?
Right.
If the magnets fail, Pastor Paul, at that velocity, this energy, all that energy becomes essentially a gun. That's what it becomes.
What?
And it will do damage.
Wait. Are you saying that CERN would explode?
It would explode something. It would hit something. Those particles traveling at that speed would hit something. They would no longer be contained. So wherever it failed first, they would shoot out from that point, going everywhere. That could bring down aircraft. That could just, that could really do some damage. And if it's concentrated, it could really harm a person or people or lots of people pretty bad. So that's essentially CERN itself is a particle weapon, right?
Okay.
Like a futuristic particle gun, but it's wrapped in a tube. And so when you shoot, it goes all the way around this tube. The magnets keep the particles in a specific field so they can direct the flow of it back into that collision detector. That's what happens. So that's essentially a big gun. And if the containment magnets fail, right, because those particles follow the field of those magnets. If they're turned off, if they fail or something like that, they're in trouble. That's why they have it so low under the Earth. That's why it was important that there's no degree influx or of declination upon these tubes because they have to be flat. So if it fails, the hope is it'll just go through the earth and eventually be, kind of bogged down by the earth itself. That's the hope. But we know there was an aircraft that went down for no reason when CERN fired up and one of the magnets failed.
Wow.
An aircraft came down.
So you're thinking there's possibility when we fire, every time you get this CERN thing going, it could really cause problems like planes falling out of the sky.
If those magnets fail, in that case they did, the magnets failed.
Yeah.
That same day the magnets failed, that plane came down.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. See, I knew there was something that we needed to talk about. I didn't know how that worked. So you're saying the same day it happened. Mike, all right. Now, I've got to ask you this question because ancient texts that have been discovered keep showing a sun with wings. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm Nibiru. I saw that there's ancient carvings, ancient inscriptions of a planet or a sun that has wings, and this sun with wings is showing up in a lot of different ancient scripts throughout the world. So my question to you is: do you think that this is what will Planet X have something like that? When we do see it more and more, I mean, for real, when everybody's really got a glance at it, does this thing have some kind of? Why would there be wings on this? Is that got anything to do with this?
Wings are a representation of a few things in ancient times. For one, anything in the air, when you see wings on it, means it has the power of flight or that gift of flight. We have a certain type of wing on it. There's a mammal's wings, and then you have those special bird wings. They're very special wings. They're made a specific way, known as divine wind or some mechanism to carry something in the air. So we know it's not from Earth. It's up there in the atmosphere.
Right.
On all those depictions of these entities around that object, all these entities also have watches on. Did you see that? They have watches in a bag. That watch in a bag is very important. Or that bracelet that looks like a watch in the bag they carry. You'll always see that. It's very important. They go hand in hand with that, with the object with the wings on it. Now, a lot of people they thought it meant the sun, right?
Right.
It's a bit more to it than that. It's a whole lot more to it than that. And that would take a thorough explanation as to, because we always learn and grow. And so since the time when they discovered these things, and they kept digging out new things, there have been corrections to the interpretation. They certainly did speak about a vehicle of, or let's just say a mechanism of travel. For example, in the Bible, right? In the Bible, there's an object that blots out 1/3 of the
sun.
Everything is blotted out.
Yeah.
The moon, the sun, and the stars. Now, the only way you can blot out the moon, the sun, and the stars is to have an object between you and the moon, the sun, and the stars. You can't block out part of the stars and the sun and the moon unless you put a big object up there.
Right.
And then this object is in the way of a portion of the moon, a portion of the sun, and of course a portion of the sky is missing, right? But
Right.
at the same time, this object is in the way. That's when the angel with the keys of the bottomless pit comes down and opens up the pit, right? So it's almost like something parks itself or comes by, and when it's in a specific position, then the gates of hell or the pit is opened up on the face of the earth.
Right.
When this thing comes by, well, that just so happens to be the exact same story in a lot of ancient writings. When a object came by, it looked like, they said it looked like a black eye with tentacles wrapped around it with fire coming out of it and going back into it, right? Like it was going out and into itself. When this thing comes by, no one misses it, and it poisons the atmosphere. It's hard to breathe during that time. But every single time it's as a mountain start belching forth flame and all this other stuff happens, it's just utter devastation. But that death has released itself on the face of the earth. And this is a time they wanted their children's children to be warned of. So, that's a very bad thing. So, yes, it's depicted all over the place.
All over. Different ancient civilizations keep showing it. When the Lord spoke to me last July and showed me Revelation 9:11 and said, this event is about to happen. and I went to the Bible and I read it, and of course it says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue Abaddon, in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. He's released, as you just said. Is there a possibility the timing of the releasing of Abaddon could be tied to the arrival of this binary system?
Sure, absolutely. And that's, I know everybody's in a rush to see it. I'm not,
I'm not
because I
either.
suspect that it comes with, see, but look, the truth is, we live on this earth. We have a lot of mysteries on this earth. It's always like something is peeking around the corner. We certainly believe in the spiritual realm. I do believe that this other place is it goes away for a long time for a reason, just long enough for humanity to reach a full-grown potential where we can truly make a choice and decide things, right? We have an understanding of things like no other generation before us. Not to say we're the smartest. We just have an understanding of things like no other generation before us. So we are qualified to make certain choices right now. I also believe that because we can handle more things than the average, you got to think of something. No other civilization, as they come up to this level, has dealt with the type of immorality. A Christian in times past could not deal with the world today, no more than our grandparents can deal with our generation right now. When I was growing, whenever all people were growing up, their parents would say, well, I don't understand these kids. We heard that all the time. But everybody can
Right.
hear that term. They understand it. Well, just think about Christians a long time ago. How they would feel right now. They wouldn't be able to survive. They would say, I
No.
want no part of what I see here. They wouldn't be able to function. But us, we walk in the middle of sin, in the middle of iniquity. We walk right in the in the snake pit, and we can function as Christians. So we are a little more adapted than we first thought, right? A little more resilient than we first thought, because others before us didn't have to deal with iniquity like we do, right?
No.
We nudity is all over the place, cursing all over the place, blasphemy is all over the place. That's not very conducive of a Christian environment. So as we reach this point and information is traveling to and fro, people have knowledge. The more they know, the more they're accountable for. That also means we're armed to make choices. And during this time where we can make choices, we're reaching a plateau. I've noticed this with a lot of people, even within myself. You get to the point, you reach this plateau, you start seeing this plateau in everybody else. They're saying, okay, now, we know about that mystery, this mystery, that mystery. We love the Lord, but the world is starting to decline morally.
Yeah. Oh,
It's a
yeah.
real fight to get it back up. And more people are starting to decline. Well, in the Bible, when they fall away, that's when all the stuff unfolds, right?
Yes, the great
But
falling
only when
away.
they fall away. And so at this plateau, just like in our lives, we reach this point to where we no longer aspire for the mysteries of the earth, but we know about the mysteries of the earth, and we're looking for something greater than what can be offered. Right? That's why we can only be here for so long, and then we've got to go. If we stay over that mark, we'll be a spoiled soul, because we'll be
Right.
too, downhearted. So this
So,
whole we've reached up to this point. Humanity has reached a point, an age where it's time for harvest of
yes.
humanity. We've
Yes.
reached that point.
So, in other words, the evil, because the iniquity abounded, the love of many will wax cold, as it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. You also quote there the scripture where it says, except there come a great falling away first, the end will not come. Uh, we're going to see division, murder, crime, lawlessness, wars, rumors of wars. Yet he said, see that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. The end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom and kingdoms, and we're going to be seeing more pandemics and pestilences and famines and earthquakes and asteroids and whatever else. And we shouldn't be alarmed by it. We should recognize that these are the birthing pains of the last days. And it is going to be so wicked. There's no doubt about that. That it's going to be to the point where Christ has to come back. He has to come get his bride, lest there be no flesh saved. And let me ask you, do you feel that with all the cloning that's going on and all the splicing of the genomes and all the manipulation with the transhumanism movements, do you feel that man is about to cross a threshold that God will not allow? Is there something about ready to happen?
I think that some already have, and that is to understand what's in the hidden portions of the earth. They're parts of society people can't see. And if you see them, it's very difficult to deal with life, right? In fact, if you saw that portion of these hidden things, one would cling to life probably a bit too much, but they would also be, they couldn't be the same person
Couldn't bear
anymore. Once you're exposed to that, you start to see that influence all over the place.
Is it demonic? Is it supernatural?
Oh, it's supernaturally demonic, big time. And you know what, Pastor Paul, it's just like the immorality of this world, right? Because I still get sickened by stuff that I see, even my own thoughts sometimes, right? If thoughts will try to creep into your own head,
right?
And you'll say, "What, Lord? What in the world is that doing? What is no?" Right? You'll kick it out
Right.
because you don't want it. But there are a lot of people at this time. They don't see it anymore, Pastor Paul. They don't hear the cursing. They don't see the violence. They don't care about nudity on television. They don't believe in the sanctity of
They're
marriage.
desensitized.
They don't believe in the family unit. That's right. And to them, in the Bible, Jesus was the one who said that the people of the world, they're not going to know that these days are different, that the day of their doom, that the day of the coming
Right.
of the Son of Man is any different than any other day.
Yep.
He said it's going to be, then he also referenced Noah too. He said, they knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be, which means the world is not going to see the signs like we do.
No.
And what that tells me is this: when a Christian has something on his or her heart about something happening in the world's not meant to see it. We are. And see, we are the ones that have been giving the timepiece to track. The world's not given the season of their own doom. We are.
Yep.
Right. So if we side with the world, it's going to look like nothing is happening. But if we are full of the Spirit, we're still have our foundation in Christ, and iniquity is still iniquity.
Yep.
Right. Then we're going to notice that timing. We're going to say this stuff is out of control.
So
This stuff
greater,
is out of control.
greater is He that's in us than he that's in the world. You
That's
know,
right.
and if God,
we're meant to notice.
Yeah.
The world is meant to pay the price, not us. We don't
Right.
pay the price. This
No.
is part of our deliverance.
we're not
Because
appointed
the more
unto
we see
wrath.
Pastor Paul.
Yeah.
That's right. The more we see, oh, no, I got to get my life right. We keep purging, right? We keep
Yep.
purging. Everything we see, we purge. We say, no, can't play with that. In fact, if there were no police officers, every bank would be robbed right now. Right?
Well, of course.
So that threat of punishment to a person who wants to be an upstanding citizen, they want no part of going to jail. They don't want no part of that. So guess what? That's a great deterrent for them, right?
Right.
It's not that they don't want to, have money available. It's just they're not going to cross the line because that's not befitting of a citizen, right?
No.
So that's us. When we see sin out there multiplied in the earth, and we know there's a penalty behind it, we say, no, I'm not going to disrespect Christ. That I'm not going to cause him to have to be crucified again for me. I'm not doing that. I'm going to respect him. I'm going to hold his name above all names, and that's in our hearts. So we get better and better. This is our deliverance point.
Amen. And this is why, folks, we lift up, when the enemy comes against you like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard. Like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up that standard. And I think what you're saying, Mike, is no matter how ugly it gets, no matter how violent it gets, no matter how lack of faith you see out there, no matter how treacherous and how blind the world is. The world's really blind. They're blind. They're blind guides.
They are. That's right.
But we are not the children of the world because we've overcome the world. We're not the children of the darkness. We're the children of the light. And so we don't stumble in this. And I think that's why programs like this, we get together, Mike, we talk about these things. This is to edify the church, to instruct and encourage the church that we can make it. We're going to make it in Jesus' name. Amen. That's right. Mike,
I'm grateful for it.
Amen.
I'm grateful.
Mike, we're going to be having a webinar May 20th and 21st. It's called Overcoming Evil.
Oh, let me in it.
You're in. Okay.
I like that. I love that.
Okay, Overcoming Evil. And we're just going to, and I just got the phone with Lester Summerall, Dr. Lester Summerall's grandson. He's accepted to be one of the speakers in it as well. And of course, he traveled with his grandfather all over the world and seen a lot of demonic activity. But Overcoming Evil. Mike's in, Lester Summerall's in, and we'll let you guys know who else is in as we get them in. Mike.
That's awesome, Pastor Paul.
All right. Hey, praise God. Thank you for being here. Another great broadcast. And we'll just see what the world brings us a week from now, if we're still here.
Yeah, we sure will. Pastor Paul, and also for everybody, remember, doom is for those who will be doomed. It's not for the saints.
Amen. We're not appointed unto wrath. We're not doomed.
That's right.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate.
God bless you,
God
Pastor Paul.
bless you, brother. Amen.
All right.